Hi, my name is Brandon, and I'm an alcoholic and addict in recovery. One of the things that's been important to me in reading more about recovery and in reading different ideas about recovery and addiction is to keep as open a mind as possible. And sometimes I read things that strike me as a little odd in the beginning, but I try to keep an open mind because I know that the more I can take in, the better off I'm going to be. And so I'm having to do that today with Tommy Rosen's Recovery 2.0. In the section I'm in, he talks about the frequency of addiction. And he starts off by discussing the vibration that everything in the universe has. I'll read a couple of paragraphs just to outline this concept. I'm going to do this for two reasons. One, the concept is important to his book and his philosophy about addiction and the way that it interacts with both the individual and the world around the individual. And I feel like it's, even if you don't quite believe in what he's saying, the ideas that are going to come out of it might be significant. And two, because what he describes as happening as a result of this frequency, I definitely identified with, and I think all addicts can identify with. So this is what he says about the vibration and frequency of addiction. He says, everything in the universe vibrates. Of course, you are no different. Think of your body-mind system as a tuning fork that vibrates at a certain frequency, which is influenced by all the inputs from your life. Family, friends, education, culture, food choices, media choices, personal habits, and lifestyle choices, deeply held beliefs, thoughts, and more. As you change the inputs, your frequency, the way your cells vibrate, will change as well. This is subtle yet very profound. Addiction carries a frequency all its own. If your mind-body system is attuned to the frequency of addiction, you will be under the influence of the energy addiction brings. It will affect the way your entire reality unfolds for you. Your thinking, now this is the part, this next part is the part I really identified with. Your thinking will skew negative and feel quite loud, if not completely overwhelming at times. You will have a sense that something is lacking, and you will be disconnected from your body and intuition. This means that the decisions you make may not be in your best interest. Instead of living a life that attracts harmony and flow, you will be like a divining rod for difficulty, challenge, and pain. You will feel like you are swimming upstream in life. These are conditions from which anyone would seek refuge. And that describes my period in addiction so well. The idea that I had negative thoughts that felt quite loud. I had those all of the time, and sometimes they were overwhelming. The idea that something is lacking. Look, the idea that something was lacking in my life drove so much of my life in addiction, and has been and being removed from that feeling has been one of the biggest blessings in recovery, because I don't feel like that anymore. And so that was one of the most difficult parts of my addiction, though. I felt like there was something missing, and that I was missing out on things, and that I hadn't done what I should have done in life, and that I wasn't like, my friends who were more successful. And there were all these negative thoughts that kept churning in me, that kept making me want to escape. And that disrupted the harmony and flow in my life. And that, again, led to, like he says, difficulty, challenge, and pain. I felt like I was swimming upstream. And that's what I used to think, is that life was so difficult, so challenging, that life was pain, that life was just one challenge after another, and you just had to slog through it. What a terrible way to live. And it was a relief And it has been a relief these past 2 years in recovery to not have to live that way anymore and to live life freely. That doesn't mean it doesn't get hard sometimes. It doesn't mean it's not difficult or challenging. I had a very challenging day yesterday. And at the end of the day, I was about to bust because I was just at the end of my rope. I had used up all my patience, but I was doing the right thing. And I knew I was doing the right thing. And I was facing a challenge in the right way and handling it the right way. And it just took a lot of energy. And that's why I was worn out at the end of the day. So I really like the idea here, even though the vibration, the frequency, it's a little hard for me to swallow. But what he describes next, it was easy for me to identify with. He describes, and I'm not going to tell the whole story because it's a long story, but he describes a day that he spent in Florence, Italy. And Florence, to him, represented a place where he would see things of beauty, where there was all sorts of opportunity to look at wonderful art and culture and to be immersed in some of the most profound pieces of art in the world. And he got there, and all he could think about was how he was not fitting in with the culture around him, and how people might be looking at him and realizing he was a tourist, and how he didn't quite add up to the greatness of all of the artists he was seeing, whose works he was seeing displayed. And so instead of spending time enjoying the city, he spent a lot of time in his head. He spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to get out of the situation. And then he spent a lot of time, the highlight was going and getting drunk at dinner. And that was his day in what's arguably one of the most cultural cities in the world. And he expresses that this was an important day for him, not because he enjoyed it or looks back on it fondly, but because it taught him so much about the way addiction works, and how when he's in his addiction, he gets into his head and he can't be present in the places and the moment. And that was me. I would be in these situations that I should have enjoyed, that I should have been relaxed in, that I should have been able to just go with the flow, and instead I would be fighting. I would be worried about, do I fit in? What are other people thinking of me? When am I going to get my next drug? Whether it was cigarettes, alcohol, marijuana. I need it now. If I can't get it now, what am I going to do? How am I going to get out of my head? Why am I in my head? Now I'm starting to panic. Now I feel anxiety, and now I feel a panic attack. How am I going to get through that? And then I just wanted to escape. And then being able to enjoy an actual moment, whether it was being in a place like Florence, or being just with friends and hanging out with friends. All of a sudden, I wanted to be everywhere but where I was. And that's a very lonely place to be in life. And it's a hard place to live. And like many other addicts, I lived there for a couple decades. I am so relieved to not live there anymore. Don't get me wrong. There's certain times where I'm in social situations or in places where I get in my head and it's hard to get out. But that happens so rarely these days. And when it does happen, I have tools to deal with that. For example, in social situations, if that happens, I know one of the best things for me to do is to find someone to talk to and ask them about their life from a source of genuine curiosity. Get curious about someone else. That gets me out of my head and gets me into the moment and into a conversation with someone about it. So even though it was a little bit hard for me to swallow the idea of the vibration of addiction, the frequency of addiction, I wanted to go over it because it's a topic that is core to his belief about the way recovery and addiction work, and also because it does really resonate in terms of the experiences he had. I experienced the same thing, and I know that sense of loneliness, that sense of the upstream battle, and that sense of just fighting every moment of life against life is something that most addicts and alcoholics can identify with. That's it for today. I'll be back tomorrow with more. Have a good one.